Hi, I've not released a second episode in this supposedly series for a while, so, well, I wanna say enjoy, but the games, oh man, brace yourselves cause they will suck. Big Rigs Over the Road Racing is an infamous racer that's so special, with a capital S no less, that there's hardly any other terrible game that's as well known as it is. It's not the worst one in existence, that elusive title goes to the last game in today's video, but it's really bad. And I'm unhappy to tell you why. So that you'd know why to avoid it. Like the plague, or like that dude that keeps sliding in same 5 boring ass stories about his kicks into each and every conversation you've been having over the last few years. I mean, I get it, you're a father, many of us are, but for the love of God, have something else to say than for the 17th time what your third son's first word was, even if it was a boob. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and start at the very beginning. In theory, Big Rigs was supposed to be a game about semi-trailer trucks racing through checkpoints on US truck routes, delivering cargo, all the while avoiding the police that's chasing you. And for the most part, it's totally not it, cause everything about Big Rigs is broken. It was not made by the Stellar Stone, California-based developer, despite the game box cover stating it, but outsourced by them to an undisclosed Ukrainian subcontractor who did not put much heart in it. Well, no heart really, as what we've ended up with is something rather special. Like so bad that there's no better word to describe it than special. Big Rigs gives you a choice of 4 different semi-trailer trucks, which while not a lot, should offer plenty enough variety for all the racing you'll be having. And yeah, you guessed it right, I'm taking a serious piss here, cause other than the slight difference in how they look like, all of them are the same. And there's not much difference between them all. They even all have the same max speed capped at 81 miles per hour. That said, don't let the limit fool you, these trucks are the best cars that you've ever seen, like faster than all the Lamborghinis, Ferraris and even Formula 1 cars. They're so fast in fact, that the game doesn't offer long enough game world for you to ever reach the full speed. It's a precaution, I've no doubt about that, cause if you kept going faster and faster, eventually hitting the speed of light, you'd travel back to happier times, to when Big Rigs didn't exist. That seemingly non-limited speed comes with a gimmick though. Namely, you can accelerate indefinitely, getting faster and faster, reaching higher and higher velocity only when driving backwards. Yep, to win the race, it's best to go backwards. Odd, but whatever. I wish this was the biggest issue I'd have to cover with this one, I really do. So, you jump in your truck, switch into reverse, push pedal to the metal and start racing. Like any other idiot going backwards would. But then, you realize that your opponent hasn't moved an inch and just sits there at the start line. Now, the reasons for that may be many. Maybe he went for a pee, maybe he left the kettle on and had to rush back home, or maybe, just maybe, he fell asleep bored of listening to me talking about this monstrosity. All of these are equally as feasible. I mean, the devs wouldn't forget to bake in AI routines in a game now, would they? I mean, how thick you'd have to be not to have opponent's AI in a racer. This just can't be the case, it's impossible. There's a saying that I don't remember the exact wording of, but it goes more or less like that. If you don't tell someone that something's impossible, even if it is, then they will just go ahead and do it when told to. Oh my god, I'm sure I've butchered it beyond belief, but the sentiment stands. Sometimes the ignorance of impossible makes it very much possible. And that's what we're witnessing here, boys and girls. The game has no AI whatsoever, and I literally mean none. The opponents never start driving, they don't even try to give the impression as if they wanted to race, nope. They stand there where you first spot them, stoic, unmoving like a goddamn shot on by the pigeon statue. Now, it has to be said that eventually, after backlash Stellar Stone received for the game, they did add basic rudimentary AI, keyword basic. But that's just another amazing thing about this third of a racer. Why? Well, they took the route of least resistance and decided not to overwork themselves on it, so the opponents do in fact start driving now and they aim for the finish line even. They're not very fast though, and best of all, always, like without fail, every single time, stop shy of the finish line, treating you like a spoiled brat who always has to win or otherwise will throw a fit. So even if you get lost and stray off the track, you will never lose, as AI is programmed not to cross the line, ever. They're happy to sit there for an hour if they have to, just a few feet away, waiting for you to pass it first. Let's not dwell too much on it, I mean the game wants you to win, so let's win. So you're driving your truck in full reverse like a boss, cigar in one hand, beer in the other, your girl's sitting next to you like in a much better outrun, and you're gaining speed with each passing second. Then suddenly, oh no, you're driven off the road and are heading straight for the building. At this pace, you'll never manage to brake or turn away. And as you're spending that fraction of a second before impact remembering your entire life as it passes right in front of your eyes, funny enough only focusing on negative things that have happened to you, like playing this game for instance, You say your goodbyes and boom. Only the boom never happened, cause your truck just went through everything on its way, buildings, trees, boulders, everything. The devs once again dropped the ball and forgot to add collision detection. At this point one has to wonder if they've really been even overlooking these most basic features of a racer, or was Big Rigs just made as a part of some kind of an elaborate challenge of who could make the biggest shit for least money, and then still sell it commercially. I mean, if that was the case, then Stellarstone were definitely in competition for the gold medal, or the third medal, cause I'm sure in events like this one all the awards are in varying shades of brown. If at this point you're under the impression that Big Rigs couldn't possibly get any more, well, I'm looking for a word here, let's say interesting, then you're wrong. There's so much more about it you just wouldn't believe. Well, remember how I said that you could accelerate indefinitely driving backwards? If you do plenty enough, you'll drive off the map, like literally outside of the bounds of the game world. And what happens there, you may wonder? Well, if your guess was that jack shit, then you're right on the money. Well, from time to time it bugs out and lets you win just by getting off the track, so yeah, even game-breaking bugs in this one make sure to reward you with a win. It's not even a participation award anymore, now you're just being given one for failing nearly as bad as the devs did. It's ridiculous. I've been complaining for a while now, but it can't all be bad, right? There's gotta be anything good about Big Rigs. A redeeming mechanic, feature, or a gameplay mode, maybe a fun bit that would entice you to play it. I mean, it was released commercially, people paid money for it, and there was this picture of you being chased by police on the gamebox cover. Promising a lot of fun, so let's run away from some cops. I mean, that was always fun in Need for Speed titles, how bad can it be here? And yeah, no, it's not gonna happen cause there aren't any. And I don't even mean moving, driving or chasing you for that matter, I mean existing. There's no police in the game at all, and the box cover is only ever there to lure you, to bait you into spending money. What's more, Big Rigs released at the tail end of 2003 and Stellarstone ceased to exist in 2004. Coincidence? I don't think so. So, do you think that the game was their last attempt to cash out and exit the industry? Who knows? And most importantly, who cares? If they're out, it's good, cause we really don't need any more of those quote-unquote gems. Now, so you wouldn't think that I'd keep dumping on Big Rigs, talking shit about it as if it was the worst thing ever, it has to be said that it actually comes with 5 unique tracks to zoom around on, naturally in reverse. So it's not that bad in the end, right? Unless I only told you about it just to unveil another stinky shit nugget in this bottomless pit of all things terrible and awful. And I'm sure you know which is the answer here. Yep, if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing right. So failing at everything else up to this point enticed the devs to go in, not to stray off the path, and to take that one extra step and follow through, botching the tracks too. So selecting a particular one of the 5 crashes the game to desktop. Lovely. Sure, it may have been patched eventually too, but this last in a whole series of terrible fuck-ups is like a cherry on this garbage of a cake. And I implore you to do your very best and avoid going for the slice, cause the aftertaste that it will leave you with is of the shittiest variety. My first experience with Dangerous Streets was through a gaming mag where I saw it on screenshots. They looked amazing. The characters were all uniquely designed, made out of huge-ass sprites that at the time seemed near impossible to my young self, and the game was set in on the first glance rather interesting locations. It just had to be great. It looked as good, if arguably not better than Street Fighter 2, which funny enough had a rather bad port to the Amiga and 2 even more terrible ones to PC too, but graphically it always looked decent. So, let's see if Dangerous Streets lived up to my clearly overinflated expectations. I don't think I have to use a spoiler warning here, given the type of a video that you're watching, but yeah, it's really bad. When Dangerous Streets came out originally, I still had an Amiga, but I was unfortunate enough to eventually play it on both Amiga and PC. And boy oh boy, do they both suck. Big time. Dangerous Streets is easily one of the worst versus fighting games ever made. It's another one of those I look good on screenshots, so why don't you buy me type of games that never fails to disappoint. It's a true pain to experience and watch. It will hurt your gut and wallet, cause getting it is literally throwing away money, and it will hurt your head and eyes alike, running jumpy, jerking all over the screen with its impossible to follow, built out of maybe 2-3 frames of animation for each of the character's moves. It's so terrible in fact, that coupled with incredibly unpredictable collision boxes on the enemies and your character, most of the times hits and misses are down to pure luck, and often you don't even know which of the two Lady Luck laid her choice on, as not all moves are clearly telegraphed and not all hits have an animation or sound cue confirming that they happened. It's a guessing game, and it's definitely not a fun one. It's like a guess what I ate fart guessing game, so it's not a game of skill, but a game of chance. That said, whether you do good or bad in Dangerous Street is irrelevant, because ultimately you've lost already, as you're playing this garbage and wasting your time. And time is the only commodity we have limited supply of. You could have spent it much better doing something more productive like dwelling on your past mistakes, considering many what-if scenarios, no speaking, or even training for competitive hot dogs eating. It's not something you're born with, these doggies are long and filling, it's a skill and you have to hone it. I mean, trust me when I tell you that Olympic breakdancing this year was much better than Dangerous Streets is. And it has been the first and the last for breakdancing to be featured in the Olympics. That's how terrible it went. Anyway, there are 8 characters in the game and they represent different parts of the world with a solid count of around 17-18 frames of animation each. And that goes for the walking, jumping, ducking and all specials. You can only imagine how god-awful it looks. Well, actually you don't have to imagine it at all, it's here, on the screen, running. I mean, jerking its way into video game hell, where it deservedly so belongs. People like to shit on Shaq Fu Rise of the Robots or Brutal Pulse of Fury. Heck, I am known for laying bricks on Body Blows games for everything that they are other than the graphics. And yet, every single one of them are like true gaming masterpieces as compared to Dangerous Streets. Cause in the end, I feel that it does. It makes Streets dangerous, that is. With all the potential buyers of this dirt hitting them hard, seeking thrill of combat with random passers-by that they've failed to get from the purchase. All the fighters have special moves, few of them in fact, but if you think that you'll ever get to see more than one, when it's not CPU in control of one of the fighters, then you're mistaken. You're living in a dreamland and lying to yourself. Dreamland? More like Kingdom of Nightmares. The controls are so clunky that pulling off most of these attacks is borderline impossible. I mean, it would be easier and faster just to enroll in a karate course yourself and learn few show-offy moves in real life than trying to perform them in the game. It's less painful to jump around on a floor covered with Lego bricks than it is to try to puzzle your way through controls of Dangerous Streets. It's trash. Worst of all, it was a title that was bundled with Amiga CD32 CD-based console. Yep, it was its launch title no less. Which makes me stop wondering why the machine failed and Commodore went bankrupt. And sure, it may be a far-fetched assumption, blaming one game for it all, and I would be ignoring numerous bad financial and strategic decisions on the company's management side, but I feel that Dangerous Streets was the catalyst that ignited the bonfire Commodore eventually burned on. Dangerous Streets looks, sounds and plays awful, and I wouldn't recommend it to my worst enemy. To my nemesis even. If I had one, that is, but truth be told, I'm willing to get one, not to have to ever play it again. In fact, it's such an inhuman and subpar product that it could easily be used as a means of both physical and mental TOR-TURE. Anyway, this nightmare can be had alone in single player, with a soon-to-be nemesis in 2-player mode, or in a single-player tournament. And I doubt that you'll ever get to see that friend of yours after serving him this abomination of an entertainment. The characters have light, medium and strong attacks and an unknown number of specials. Unknown, cause pulling them off without fail to confirm that they're there and not just glitches is impossible. If you value life, love and want to remain happy, or at least content, avoid this one, as it may prove dramatic to your current mental state. Brace yourselves, here comes the worst of the worst that the hell has ever spawned. Well, other than my boss's wife, but she's on another, universal rather than planetary scale. ProSoccer 2190, more like ProShitter 2024. I'm really not looking forward to this one. Oh well, let's try to power through. I'm not often lost for words, but after playing ProSoccer 2190 I actually needed a little time, a breather if you will, to compose myself and try to fully comprehend and process what I witnessed. And yes, witness is the right word, and you will soon know why. Somehow, ProSoccer 2190 never lands on lists of worst games, with titles like today's Big Rigs or ET for Atari 2600 topping the shit-stained charts. Don't get me wrong, they are terrible in their own right, some more than others, but believe it or not, this is way worse. I mean, Big Rigs, compared to ProSoccer, is like a pretty funnily broken game that's great for an occasional joke video on YouTube and a quick race from time to time to show your friends how a game could be so botched that it took down the entire company responsible for it. It's not working as intended, but it's playable and maybe even worth a chuckle. Sure, it's not one you hold on to or keep installed on your hard drive, but it's nothing compared to what we'll talk about now. If you own a copy of ProSoccer 2190, you're not selling it, you're not throwing it away or breaking it either, because throwing it away may actually make someone suffer through it and you don't wish that on anyone. And destroying it may upset the balance in nature and release the hellspawn on our world. You just never know, so why risk it? So, if you have it, you keep ProSoccer in a locked-off box that in turn you keep in a safe that then itself is buried deep underground, preferably in a remote forest somewhere or middle of the desert. I suppose dropping it in the middle of the ocean would work too. You know what, let's start light, before we get into the pure evil that it is. So, most people, even if not interested in the sport, at the very least know some basic rules of football. It is played with a ball over 2 halves by a team of 11 players plus substitutes. Whichever the side scores more goals, wins, and there are also yellow and red cards used to penalize players. Yellow is a warning, red is a permanent send-off. And ProSoccer 2190 is based on that very idea, and it's a futuristic take on it. Although shituristic may be a better term, as you'll soon no doubt find out. Shituristic as in so far-fetched idea of what's established as a baseline that it became shit. Anyway, the menu is the first thing to hit you with a sample, nay, taste of the quality of the product to expect of it. Widescreen, testing burn-in resistance of your TV with a tiny itty-bitty menu in the top left. It's not small enough to look at it through binoculars or magnifying glass, but plenty enough, especially back in the day on small 14-15-inch screen, to have you move a little bit closer to it, just close enough to irreversibly damage your eyesight. Nice. ProSoccer 2190 can be experienced from a coaching or playing perspective, and trust me when I tell you that you really don't want to be doing either. So, being the fearless badass that I am, not, and feeling adventurous, or more accurately not knowing what to expect of it, I picked one team to coach and one to play as. Although coaching is a big word for sitting and observing letters and numbers pop up on a blindingly bright white screen. I chose the quarter length and set it to 1 minute and was ready to go. Now, did any of you notice what's wrong with that sentence? Yep, soccer is played in halves and not quarters. But whatever, who am I to argue and decide on the future of football? Perhaps in the future it will be played in quarters, an action-filled, thrilling and fast game of 4 quarters. Perhaps. I may not be the best video game football/soccer player out there, as I prefer management games, but I dabbled, and have lost my fair share of games played against others. Probably more than I'd like to admit. So I was ready. Or so I thought. The first match was supposed to be a home game, which is good. You want to start on your own turf with a home field advantage, as you can count on your supporters to raise your team's spirits from the stands and help the proverbial ball rolling and goals landing. Well, it all makes sense if the sport in question has clear rules that are all well known and followed. And let me tell you, ProSoccer 2190 is most definitely not soccer. It may be 2190 nightmares all rolled into one atrocious game no less, but definitely not soccer. For one, the game starts with your and opponent's players on both sides of the football field. And for two, when the game kicked off, it took me but a few seconds to realize what kind of a stinker I had on my hands. And it was one of the highest sorts, a major one, a prime third, one that no amount of washing would allow me to clean the stench off. But knowing no better, I persevered like an idiot that I clearly am and took one for the team. Or 2, or 3, or 4, because I kept taking and taking them and it was not pleasant. Oh boy, did I keep taking. Everything that ProSoccer kept throwing at me was painful. Painful to watch, to experience, and impossible to comprehend. I mean, players did not run around the field, it felt more like a mix of casual walking with competitive inline roller skating, with an unexpected and unpredictable moonwalk here and there just to spice things up or confuse me. So controlling any of my players with precision was difficult, nay, I'd say it was impossible. What's more, most rules of football went straight out of the window, so outs, free kicks, fouls or penalties do not exist in 2190. And perhaps it's for the best, cause watching the game in motion is sickening enough, and having it to stop more often than necessary time after time again just to then resume that jerky motion would be beyond nausea-inducing nightmare. Remember the goals I mentioned initially when explaining our regular football? Yep, no goals in this one. There are scores, but no goals. Whenever you, or let's be more realistic here, CPU scores, the ball just kinda awkwardly bounces off the goal line, never actually getting in. It's like a multi-man, side view, amazingly unplayable and oh so broken air hockey diorama. And that's what it is. Oh, and each quarter has its own MVP. I mean, it's an inclusive move, I get it, the world is slowly going this way and awarding people for participation rather than actual achievements, but why in the same time exclude all the potential gamers with a broken gameplay mechanics? Why? Oh, what do I mean by that? Well, please, make yourself even more comfortable than you already are, cause unfortunately, I'm going to explain. There wasn't a single second when I felt like anything that I did with the controls had any impact on what was happening on the screen. I mean, it was like I was there just to be present in the moment and witness this magnificent shitshow unveil before my own eyes. Just look at my goalkeeper. What is he doing? What's that? Is he trying to get the ball or is he just giving up, hands up, letting the Lord take the wheel? I mean the goal. Cause he just can't take being a part of this fiasco crap nugget anymore. Or here, where I magically discovered that if I press fire fast enough the game would just randomly keep doing this shit. What's that? Is that tackling, dancing, or reenactment of 2024's Olympic breakdancing event? Maybe both players in their dozen of pixels in size glory suddenly developed consciousness and decided to have at it till there's just one of them standing. I honestly have no clue. Do you? So the more I played the game, the less I cared, to be honest, and played is not a word that fits here whatsoever, because I feel that I was actually making the match unnecessarily more difficult by taking part in it, and that my team would do much better without me. I tried management/coaching too, and if you think that playing the game was pointless as the controls didn't work as intended or at all, let me tell you, coaching is something else. It's equally as terrible, but different. Well, at the very least you don't have to pretend here to be involved in any way in the randomness of what this title is, it plays itself and does it as bad as it did when I was in control. Or at the controller, cause I was never in control of anything in ProSoccer 2190. Nothing that ProSoccer does makes me think that it's a properly working game or a game at all. I feel that it was made as a joke over the course of a weekend by 3 devs high on mushrooms, chasing them down with gallons of absinthe and then released into the wilds to see if it would stick. And it did, but not to the hearts or wallets of gamers, it stuck to the sole of your shoe, like that annoying bubblegum you accidentally stepped in. It's such a bad game that I'd rather suffer from a week-long diarrhea barely holding myself stationary sitting on a toilet that took way more punishment than any ever should, than willingly play this nightmare for any longer than it's required to record it. Presentation is no better, I'm afraid. The music's only ever present for a few seconds on the title screen and in the menus. Other than that, ProSoccer 2190 remains dead silent all throughout it. So I suppose that music gets 10 out of 10 perfect score for accurately representing the experience you'll have with the game, as there is none to be had really. Sounds are all over the place, and I don't mean their quality even, which while not great is more than acceptable, I mean how out of sync they are. They're always either too fast or too slow and play whenever they play, and not when something triggering them happens. Normally I'd say that leaves you a bit disconnected from the experience, but as you probably figured out, there's no experience or gameplay here to really be disconnected from. Which, you know, I suppose it's another of those accidental 10 out of 10s. As for graphics, let's say that your eyes won't bleed when things are stationary, but as soon as the movement's involved, oh man, that's like borderline motion sickness territory, and saying that looking at it running is uncomfortable is putting things lightly. I honestly don't believe that there's more than 2 frames of animation per each of the directions a character can move on a screen, and ProSoccer 2190 looks as if it was running at the very solid 1980s worthy 6 frames per second at the very best. To summarize, it's beyond garbage. It's one of, if not the worst game I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot of terrible ones. Because even if you really want to, ProSoccer 2190 cannot be played per se. You can sit at it with a joystick in hand, staring empty at the screen, hoping for the best, but you can never tell with 100% accuracy that what you do with the controls actually happens on the screen. In conclusion, it really makes no difference whatsoever if I'm at the controls or not, ProSoccer is gonna play itself all the same. It's a commercial title that someone got paid for, and what's worse, I'm sure that some people actually spent their money and bought it back then too. It's a video game design mistake, a grave one at that, and a monstrosity that should have never seen the light of day. It should burn in a sea of molten lava or be buried 20 feet deeper than the infamous ET for Atari 2600 somewhere in a remote location in the Nevada desert, never to be found or experienced ever again. You'd think that covering bad games is easy, but it's anything but. You really don't want to talk about titles that are so bad that they're beyond fixable and should never exist in the first place. And it's not fun at all. I think that sadly a few of these games here today, so do yourself a favor, use this video as a cautionary tale and avoid playing these games at all cost. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.